Hey YouTube, welcome back. This is the fourth update for a bleed bow character that we've been doing. I've got a whole playlist of videos here. It's called Building a Better Bleed Bow Build. There's 3 videos so far. This is the 4th one, and we're going to talk about some of the updates that we made for the character ever since we started looking for more damage on this marksman here. So if you weren't checking out the initial videos, we started out with the premise of working with Xithara's Conundrum. This thing has a last line of text that says more physical damage while at full health, and we wanted to use this along with, ways of staying at full life that aren't potions, aren't leech, and aren't regen, in order to take advantage of that additional more multiplier. Because stuff like this is really interesting when you can turn it into a legendary item, like the one we have here. So we're staying full life with a bunch of life gain on skill use, life gain on crit, life gain on hit, life gain on shift, and life gain on Dark Quiver pickup. So along with all those things, we can stay at full health and then take advantage of the more multiplier on the amulet here. So, the last time we were working on this, we got up to, it was like, the ticks of damage on the dummy were about 250k ticks. So, there's 2 ways that people keep track of damage for a damage over time build. They either get as big a tick as possible, so the biggest tick would be something like this, and then you just kind of like look at the numbers as they tick up here. And the other way that people measure damage is kind of like the YouTube thumbnail clickbait, which is actually helpful, believe it or not. But that is to use something like Puncture that consumes all the bleeds and makes all the damage happen in one big pop. So, compared to other builds, I think we're doing pretty well right now. My tick damage would be based on like me shifting, getting 6 stacks here, and then holding this down for a bit, which ends up being, this is about 300k, but if I'm doing it right, our tick damage is about 500k, which is pretty good damage. And if we opt into Puncture and have some kind of like bleed consumption, this allows me to compare it to maybe some other YouTube videos out there that you've seen about like 3.5 mil DPS pops with a nice clickbait title, courtesy of Epoch builds. So thanks to him, I actually have a way of comparing my DPS. My pop damage on this character right now is a little bit over 6 million damage. So it's 3.5 mil on the video that I'm comparing myself to, as opposed to over 6 mil pops on this character. So I think in terms of DPS, our character is doing well, which makes me feel really good about the whole thing. So let me walk through what the character looks like right now, how our consistent DPS is about 500k, how our pop DPS, if you want to call it that, is about like maybe 6.2, 6.3 million damage. And then we can talk about the gearing process as well. So let's go through the skills real quick. Not too much here has changed. If you've seen Flurry before, we took out the 1, 2, 3, 4 points for the extra mana generation from Sap Willweaver or Willpower. It turns out that even if we don't have this, our mana generation is really not bad, or our mana consumption is really not bad over a couple seconds. And then every time that we're attacking, we're generating a tremendous amount of mana. So just 1 or 2 attacks can bring us back to full with a mana. So we've dropped those points there, and instead we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, these points to crescendo, which is -15, plus 75. So it's about 15% more damage per point, for a grand total of 15, 30, 45% more damage, approximately, based on this node right here. We could spend these nodes in other places. We could spend 1 more point for another additional 10% attack speed here, which is a possibility. You can go for more consistency down an adrenaline rush, or like a little bit of bleed chance or a little bit of bleed effect. But we already have so much bleed effect thanks to Salt the Wound and our new helmet that we're using that we don't think those 2 things are necessary. But I think that coming down here is a good choice for us. If we had 22 points, I think I'd start speccing into Relentless, or maybe into the extra bleed chance. I don't think the bleed effect is going to be as useful for us. After that, Puncture should look pretty similar. We are not consuming bleeds, because that lowers your DPS overall, but it makes for a good clickbait title, so it's a good way to compare damage, but it's not a good way for us to actually build damage and deal damage in the real world. We have 1 point down here for -3 attack speed, but it gives a more damage multiplier, so I like this kind of trade-off. For Puncture, we are 5 out of 5, or sorry, Shift. For Shift, we're 5 out of 5 points in the dodge rating per dexterity, and then we're still proccing shurikens off this. Shurikens are extraordinarily simple. It's one of the most common ways you'll ever see shurikens spec'd. So if we can shift and have these spinning, you'll see that we'll get a couple stacks of shred on the enemy per shuriken that hits them. So this is a nice way to build up comparison values, right? When you're looking to like get the biggest pop possible. For Dark Quiver, this skill here has sometimes been Smoke Bomb. Right now we're using Dark Quiver. It's basically a question of like, do you want to like numb lock Dark Quiver and have it going as you walk around? So every once in a while, your character is going to do a small stutter step like this. And unfortunately, Dark Quiver is a buff and dexterity tag. It does not have the attack tag. So no matter how much attack speed I have, it never actually goes off any faster. So it's a tiny bit goofy in that regard. But what it means is it gives us much, much, much more consistency in being capped on glancing blow chance. So we have our arrow guard here, and then we have the nodes in the tree. So we have 79 just walking around. But as soon as we pick up one of these arrows, we go over 100% chance to receive a glancing blow when hit. So that's a good place for us to be. It also gives us a tiny bit of extra damage, tiny bit of extra damage on puncture as well. Gives us some health, gives us some frenzy. There's some good things going on here. So basically, we're using it for Nightfall and then filling in the rest as we see. I was messing around with the idea of proccing Shadow Cascade and specking Shadow Cascade instead of Shurikens here and generating a bunch of shadows like this. Unfortunately, that gets that also procs this node here. So this is a nice segue. Now that we're done talking about the skills, let's talk about the mastery, right? So we're still using Coated Blades. If you're trying to proc something like Shadow Cascade, you're going to consume a tremendous amount of mana, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable. So because of that, we can't use Shadow Cascade. Coated Blades is another 80% more damage multiplier, which feels fantastic for us. This is one of the benefits of being Channeled Bow Flurry instead of being Detonate Arrow like we were 2 or 3 videos ago. So the rest of this is pretty normal. As we've been leveling up, we've been putting more points into Swift Assassin, a little bit of extra attack speed, and a few more points into Arrow Storm as well. You get some extra attack speed here. The rest of the skill tree should look more common. If you want to run down to this, just go check the past videos too. For the idols, we have been working on removing questionable items from our gear in order to get more resistances, basically. So we needed a bunch of elemental resistance because we were low on fire, lightning, and cold, and I was using all my idols to get like percent health, elemental res. So percent health, ele res, percent health, ele res. And I was using all of those in order to get a good life total. I was at 2,400, and also to cover my resistance. So what we did is we fixed our blessing from lagging. We got 72 lightning res here. And then we could either use a Heoborian boot, which has a cold res implicit, or a Solarium boot, which has a fire res implicit. And we want to get the explicit modifier as a suffix of the opposite. So we're going to use this to cap fire and cold res, get a little bit of res here. And then you can see this has vitality and tier 4 hybrid life. It should have, tier 5 vitality and tier 5 hybrid life. So this should easily get us back up to 2,000 life, which I think is like the minimum life total that I want. I don't want any less than 2,000 life. So we swapped over to the Solarium Boots. And what that allows us to do is use some of these tense idols up here. So tense, the prefix on these idols here, it says bow attack speed for 3 seconds when you use a bow attack with a 10-second cooldown. So this goes from 7 to 20, and we have a 10 roll and a 12 roll. So these could be much, much better. If we get some kind of exalted life or exalted vitality or exalted hybrid life on a pair of boots, then we could even drop some more of these life idols here and still maintain the 2,000 life total that we're looking for. So there's a little bit of stuff, a little bit of affixes we don't have. We only have a 1 LP woven flesh instead of 2. So we're using this to completely cap our crit avoidance because the gearing has become very tight on this character because I want to use all these different legendary items because I've kind of been exploring with what it means to use legendary items. For example, we're still missing a prefix here. We have void damage on this ring, even though the rest of the ring's good, and void damage is wasted, so c'est la vie. And then the last thing that we've changed is we had been using this helmet here. So you can see my life total goes from, 1831 to 2182. So quite a bit of extra life there if we're using a normal rare. But this gives us bleed effect and bleed duration. So the bleed effect, if you think about it, crit multi is converted to bleed effectiveness at 59%. So this is kind of like having another, if we double this, it's like double minus a bit, right? This is kind of like having 65 crit multi on my helmet, and then converted into bleed effectiveness. So this bleed effect is really, really nice for us. The bleed duration, it's helpful for a single target, but it doesn't really help for smaller monsters, so we don't really care about that. If we can fit this in the build, it's tremendous. It gives us a ton of damage. I can show you what the DPS difference is on my tooltip here. This is 9.3 as opposed to 10, or this would be 15.2 or 17. It's a little bit different because we gain crit multi as we attack, because if we've crit recently, we have some extra stacks of our passive, which is the bow mastery, which means that 70... it's a really hard thing to compare because I need to swap the gear back and forth really quickly. But the point is this. As we get stacks of our bow mastery, we get crit multi. The crit multi means that the relative benefit of putting on Corsair Blood Cowl is less. Overall, the DPS works out that this is more damage for us. We might not need more damage. We already take damage over time for 500k, and then our pop DPS, or our one single pop is 6 million, which I think is an appropriate amount of DPS. So maybe this helmet's not worthwhile, but I wanted to try out to see how much damage we could actually get out of this build using everything that we have access to. So even in hardcore at 1800 life, I'm feeling pretty good. It does feel awkward not having any sort of sustain outside of life gain on hit, life gain on skill use. So for something like Xithara, I don't think this would be particularly good. And, you know, you get hit once and your life total just kind of stays at half until you can continue hitting over and over. So it's a build that's really good in ideal scenarios against Xithara, and it doesn't do very well in like non-ideals against Xithara. However, for mapping and for like, you know, generic corruption pushing on the monolith, this build feels tremendously good. So we're gonna keep playing this build. We're gonna keep working on it. I want to sort out the life total, maybe get a 2 LP Woven Flesh, maybe get percent life, hybrid life, and cleanse on a Thorn Slinger if I can get a 3 LP Thorn Slinger, and then get vitality, hybrid life, better cold res here. There's a couple more things I want to work on in order to continue working on this character, but I think the simple combination of Reign of Winter with a ton of attack speed and just as much attack speed as you can get, as a bleed bow build feels very, very good. So that at the core feels excellent. All these other toys that we're playing with, I like them too. They're fun, but suffice it to say, I think if you're looking to play a bleed bow build, Reign of Winter with as much attack speed as possible, maybe even a bleed suffix, if you can get that kind of thing on a 2 LP, would be a good place to be. So we'll keep working on this. If you have questions, you can always leave them in the comment section of this YouTube video, or you can just drop by Twitch, twitch.tv/CarryThePig, and we'll keep working on it and see how it turns out. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.